They left on April 3, 2021. California's they left on April 3, 2021. California's Hellenale for what they anticipated to be a standard vacation. However, by the next day, their journey became a terrifying experience. Alex had a reputation for exploring remote. Both Emily Henley and Alex Loughran, seasoned outdoor lovers, set out to, while camping in Death Valley, furnished with camping gear, water, and enough food to survive a minimum of 1 day. Regions, and Emily had come to appreciate accompanying him in these wilderness travels. They left that morning with intentions to investigate a portion of Death Valley's renowned locations, then setting up camp beneath the celebs after that evening. Typically, they lacked a campsite in mind, merely a general region in which they intended to dwell for the evening. A park ranger had earlier that day directed them to a remote location deep Hellenale for what they anticipated to be a standard vacation. However, by the next day, their journey became a terrifying experience. Alex had a reputation for exploring remote. Both Emily Henley and Alex Loughran, seasoned outdoor lovers, set out to, while camping in Death Valley, furnished with camping gear, water, and enough food to survive a minimum of 1 day. Regions, and Emily had come to appreciate accompanying him in these wilderness travels. They left that morning with intentions to investigate a portion of Death Valley's renowned locations, then setting up camp beneath the celebs after that evening. Typically, they lacked a campsite in mind, merely a general region in which they intended to dwell for the evening. A park ranger had earlier that day directed them to a remote location deep in the park, only reachable by a rough backcountry road. Alex is always game for an adventure, and Emily was pleased with the recommendation. The path brought them to Gold Valley Road, a difficult, unpaved route meandering through in the middle of the desert. Despite being far away, it seemed doable. They were operating the Subaru Forester is a car designed for off-road conditions, and felt assured that could manage the challenge. As they continued to explore the park and the surrounding area, started to shift Death Valley's entire intensity, a merciless stretch of a place where stillness and time seemed to stand still. It rained. The valley is North's lowest point. America, divided by prehistoric forces into a large area of rocky salt flats, sun-scorched dunes and valleys. Soaring, the colors of the mountains frame the basin, changing with the daylight. It's a starkly beautiful place, and harsh extremes, where temperatures soar to unprecedented heights and there is minimal shelter in the landscape. To experienced adventurers such as Alex and Emily, it was a heaven and a challenge, an untamed area where few risked to stray far from the main roads. However, at 5:30 p.m., the feeling of a terrifying reality replaced the wonder. As they descended the barren road, 2 loud blasts broke the silence. Emily felt her stomach drop. They stopped, got out, and discovered that the tires on the passenger side were ripped, separated by a sharp rock embedded in the road. Having only one extra tire and no cell reception, they discovered that trapped in the center of Death Valley, roughly 22 miles from the closest paved path. No shade was present, no apparent sources of water, and no simple solution. Out. Instincts took over. Swiftly. Typically, the pair, well prepared, started thinking right away through their subsequent make a move. They flooded over that night maps and manuals to make a strategy. For the next day, they assembled a Dayak, filled it with many layers of water, several tuna pouches for each of a survival kit, them, and any other necessities they may require. They stayed in their car all night, attempting to recuperate for the lengthy journey in advance. 4 a.m. the following morning, when they woke up, they made a critical choice. Instead of going back to after a 22-mile journey, they decided to take a different path that led to Mormon Point across a mountain pass on a identified path, expecting to locate help or get at a location with assistance close by. Their route took them through a tough canyon with high cliffs on both sides and feeling lightheaded. Drops. Prior to leaving, they left a message within the Subaru, heading to Mormon with 2 flat tires. Point has enough water for 3 days. They tried their hardest to indicate discomfort, labeling the vehicle with obvious signs that they were stuck and putting rocks on the ground in a big arrow pointing in the direction of their intended path. In the early morning light, They set out on their adventure in the dark. The desert was illuminated by the moon with unexpected brilliance, creating shimmering shadows as they proceeded. Even so, they recognized the seriousness of their circumstance, potentially a life-threatening or death. They were able to find times of serene, even taking in the stark beauty of Death Valley surrounding them. When Alex arrived at the trail, stopped to gather stones and made, just in case, an additional directional arrow. Perhaps someone will walk by and follow their route. At approximately 8 a.m., a flash of there was hope. A geocache concealed on the path. There was a logbook and other trinkets, frequently left by friends. Hikers. Discovering it gave them confidence that this path had been traveled by others, and it made them feel more hopeful. They continued, but the trek quickly turned into more challenging. As the path became smaller, into a slot canyon, soaring granite faces towered over them, and the route became more dangerous, full of sharp stones and acute slopes. Going through the geocache, they saw a remark about a 70 in the logbook foot waterfall close by. After about a mile, they arrived upon it and were filled with fear. The waterfall fell directly down a sheer precipice. There was no easy descent. The path obviously needed equipment for climbing, ropes, harnesses. They lacked the necessary equipment. They conducted scouting the space for a different route down, but discovered none. With little choices, they made a crucial decision. Proceed, even if it required climbing the precipice. Alex looked for any organic footholds, ledges or boulders that could serve as steps. Emily anxiously observed as he started to come down, urging, "Be careful." She called, "One step at a time. No dangers. Go slowly. Please be. Take caution." Alex made steady progress, but shortly arrived at a location where the rock face no longer provided simple holds. He made a call. "I don't see a safe way down," I said. Heading back up. Emily stayed concentrated, looking about, looking for anything at all to rescue. Then she heard him yell, "I lost my hold." She felt a wave of panic. "What? Are you saying that you lost your hold?" She sobbed as she fumbled for a branch, anything, a handhold, a rope, but it's too late. Alex slid a few seconds later and fell 70 feet down the waterfall's face, disappearing from her sight. Emily froze in shock, screaming. Her heart was pounding as she stood near the brink, unable to understand what had just occurred. She was desperate, by herself, and she was deeply shaken and unsure of what must carry out next. By some sort of incredible good fortune, Alex was still breathing. He called out to Emily, asking her to obtain assistance. Time was running out. Only a few minutes prior to the September, she had identified a potential path. A small crack runs down the canyon wall. Along the rock face's left side. Alex had collapsed to the right. However, this fissure on the other wall, despite being perilous and steep, it appeared like her sole chance to get in touch with him without. Emily hesitated before making a heartbreaking choice. Her personal security was now secondary. She needed to get to him. Traversed the canyon's left side, holding onto the rough granite walls with her. She braced herself with wide arms between the two sides of the crack. Carefully, inch by inch, she descended into the abyss. She came to a point halfway down, where the rock had run out of options. Handholds. She was suspended using. About 30 feet remain. Thinking. Quickly, she let her backpack fall to the ground below, in the hopes that it might soften her impact. Then, taking a deep breath, Emily. She released off and fell hard on the ground, hurting. Shot through her body, causing her to land on her feet and heard the distinct snap of bone. Her ankle had cleanly broken, but remarkably nothing. Others appeared to be seriously hurt. Driven by dread and adrenaline, she hobbled and forced herself to stand in the direction that Alex had fallen, but it was too late. Alex had died from his injuries. Passing away in the canyon on April 4, 2021, is Easter Sunday. Emily was heartbroken, but there was no period for mourning, not. Still, she had to assess her surroundings. The truth struck her like they had landed on a ledge after their second fall. Midway through the canyon, underneath them was an additional 100 feet, fully unpassable, even if her ankle were intact. There was no way out. Helplessness, remorse, and loneliness around her like a canyon walls. She sobbed in silence that night, The gloom provides no consolation. When dawn arrived, her hope, if everything had swiftly turned into a nightmare, disappeared. Alex remained absent, and she remained unaccompanied, hurt, and trapped, but Emily wasn't prepared to. She stood up and made a list of her possessions. Departed with the materials they had packed the previous evening: water, tuna packs, and, above all, a survival. There was a Meyer emergency kit inside. Blanket that she used to create a temporary shelter by stacking close by rocks for assistance. Her most important, however, the solar charger she had brought. It sustained her phone, not because because there was no signal, but to maintain a journal, a means of holding on to sanity, a means of recording her optimism. She wrote each day, "We shall be saved. We'll leave this place," but, even as she penned those words, a portion of she was aware that the odds were against her. Was among the most remote areas of Death Valley is isolated, quiet, and ruthlessly harsh. Even while the canyon offered shade, it didn't protect her from the desert's harshness. Every day at 1:30 p.m., the sun broke through the little aperture above, casting unrelenting heat and light onto the ledge. Sunburn and dehydration became into her next adversaries. Fortunately, she found a shallow. The ledge's niche is just large enough to shelter at the hottest times of the day. It protected her for almost 4 hours every day from the worst of the sun's wrath. Created a daily routine, a list of she had to finish survival duties prior to the sun's merciless peak. The most crucial component. Put up with the afternoon. Continue until evening. Despite its lack of grandeur, the waterfall trickled down next to her like a lifeline. It was more of a steady stream as opposed to a cascade, but it offered sufficient water to replenish her bottles and preserve her life. Alex's body was stuck on that cliff. Only a few feet away, every hour was a struggle against sorrow, heat, suffering, and hopelessness. However, she persisted in using her restricted resources and unwavering determination. Emily assumed command of the lone lifeline. With the tiny stream pouring down, she had the wall of the canyon. Using grit and inventiveness, she designed a little dam to collect the water, making an area where she may wet her towel and clothing. It was an essential step to control her body's temperature in the searing heat. The Meyer blanket, initially packed to maintain warmth at night, has evolved into a multi-purpose gadget that served as a sunshade, protecting her from the unrelenting desert rays, but it wasn't designed for this type of the abuse. The thin piece of metal tore wind, time, rock edges, and ease, wearing it down all the time. Every day, she patched up the damage for almost an hour. Delicate blanket, utilizing bandages from the survival gear to maintain its integrity. Together, in addition to food and water, it became her most treasured possession, and with every day that goes by, its significance only sprouted. In the meantime, far from the remote canyon where Emily managed to survive, the world has started to take note of their absence. Information about the couple's disappearance dispersed throughout the nation. Search and rescue crews conducted, combing through Death Valley, every backcountry, attraction, and trail road. By April 7, Wednesday, 2021, it had been 4 days since Alex and Emily had disappeared that day. Crews thoroughly examined the Death Valley Highway and close-by landmarks, followed by a key revelation. Alex had entered into a backcountry log prior to their departure, naming the region they planned to investigate. Searchers found gold using that breadcrumb valley road, where they ultimately found the deserted white Subaru and Dusty from the desert. Inside, the couple's handwritten note disclosed their final known path in the direction of Mormon Point, everyone's breakthrough had been hoping for. Early on April 8, Emily heard something inappropriate. The canyon, the far-off buzz of blades of a helicopter cutting through the "This is it," she said, her heart racing. Thinking, she reached for the Meyer blanket and used everything she had to wave it. Had the helicopter passed by, but didn't notice her. Then the noise came back. This time, it was louder and reverberated off the canyon walls. She waved the blanket once more. Frantically, "Please see me." This time, the aircraft decelerated after spotting the flashing of the reflecting Meyer sparkle. Down. They had located her. Alex and, at last, Emily had been found, but then, to her astonishment, the helicopter pulled. Emily watched it disappear past the Cliffs, shocked, yet she was aware. They observed me. An hour later, rescue was underway. Passed, followed by another, and then another. As the day progressed, the sun started to rise above the edge of the canyon. Her old tormentor coming back once more, with no choice, she returned to her current regimen. Process. Wet the garments, soak the towel. Crawl into the shaded area and bide your time. Then, as the final light started to fade at 7:30 p.m., a fresh tone buzzed higher through the canyon. A drone, closer and more tuned than previously, swooped over, shining a spotlight on. It was sent to verify her condition, in order to determine contact. Emily had a surge of. She became frustrated since she'd been. Yes, she had been located, but she had not yet been saved. One more evening, one more test of perseverance, but she wasn't alone herself. At last, assistance was at hand. The next day, as dawn broke, Emily held on to a tenuous hope. She heard close, and suddenly it appeared. The distinct sound of helicopter blades slicing through the morning silence. It was a Navy this time. Search and rescue team. She felt a wave of relief, yet the rescue was anything but easy. The slot canyon's topography created everything more challenging. Rescuers initially tried a hoist operation, lowering two teammates in her direction. Location, but the narrow, winding walls of the canyon, together with erratic winds caused by the helicopters' blades, descended nearly impossible. For 20 exhausting minutes, she observed as the group struggled with gravity and geology. Time and again, they were pulled off course, but ultimately, in opposition to the odds, they managed to save her. Emily was strapped into a stretcher by the team, securing her for the hoist up. She closed her eyes as they started to hoist her. Eyes tight, the feeling of ascending into the air, hovering over the rough rocks, and witnessing her trauma was also. She didn't want to look. Curiosity, however, pulled at her. Crested, and underneath her lay the limitless Death Valley's desolate wilderness. Sprawling sea of stone and beige. It seemed strange that they had discovered her at all. At such a wide and isolated location appeared. It is truly a miracle. After being evacuated to safety, Emily hurried to a local hospital, where she received urgent surgery to repair her broken ankle. She recuperated for 6 days under the vigilant eyes of medical team. Physicians informed her that the choice to leave her shoe on was made in the heat of survival had avoided hazardous edema and probably kept her alive. After she was steady, Emily went back to Cincinnati, Ohio. She had made it through one of the most harsh locations on Earth, carrying the burden of loss with her, the endurance, as well as a few could possibly hope for. A piece of legislation honoring Alex. It was renamed and passed with his support. Parks and the Alexander Loughran Veterans Act, which provides lifetime free access to Golden Veterans National Parks. Families. It became a law in December of 2021. It serves as a permanent homage to a man who trusted the therapeutic potential of the land and a woman who demonstrated how a human spirit's strength can be. The tale of Emily Henkel is one of incredible fortitude, heartache, and survival in the face of overwhelming loss. She decided to press on, and by doing this, she pays tribute to Alex every day, Loughran. If you were moved by this tale, kindly provide. Please like and subscribe to this video. Conduit for more impactful real-life narratives of fortitude, optimism, and the human spirit.